Welcome to GameFellas, the Retro to Modern Gaming Podcast, episode 10, 5, 1, 16. I always have to do that for some reason. Today, it's called the Retro to Modern Gaming Podcast, but today it's going to be the Retro to Retro Gaming Podcast because we have two special guests on who are major retro players. The first is Hungry Goriya from the Hungry Goriya YouTube channel. How are you doing?
I'm very well. How are you doing?
Good. And we are very pleased to have you on. I appreciate you coming on. I'm excited. We also have another special guest, our first episode with not one guest, but two guests. Our second guest is Andrew Haden from Retro Island Gaming. Say hello, Andrew.
Hey, what's
Aloha.
up?
Andrew is in Hawaii, so if you watch his channel, you know that, Retro Island Gaming. At the end, we'll let you guys talk some more about your channels. We'll go a little more in depth into that. But for now, I got to introduce Sorren. Hey, Sorren.
Hello.
We have Sorren on too, our co-host Sorren.
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, so with that being said, why don't we start off, as we always do, with what we've been playing lately. And Goriya, why don't you start us off? What you've been playing lately?
Sure. Well, I just finished a very long-winded playthrough of Phantasy Star 2, which was, I don't know, I don't want to call it an abomination because I'm sure I'll hurt someone's feelings out there, but it was definitely well overstaying in terms of its welcome. I wish it would have been done a lot sooner. And then after that, I was looking for a couple of things to get into that were more fast-paced and more interesting. So I ended up playing through Donkey Kong Country 2 for the first time, which was a phenomenal, exciting time for me. And also played through Robin Hood Prince of Thieves for NES, which I was super nervous to get into. But that was also something that I used to love growing up because the movie was awesome. It was so cheesy, and I think it still holds up pretty well. So getting to play the game was also really neat. And then now I'm into Crystalis or Crystalis, depending on whatever floats your boat.
That's what you're streaming right now, right?
That's what I'm streaming now, yeah. So it's the current game that I'm experiencing. And all of these things I've just played for the first time within the last couple of months. So I'm experiencing a lot of games firsthand in adulthood, which has been really cool.
And talk a little bit about Phantasy Star, because I watched your review and I thought it was hilarious because you really didn't like the game. And I had very similar thoughts when I played it. I played it after college for the first time, and it was very annoying and tedious. And go ahead, talk about that a little bit if you don't mind, because I think you have an interesting perspective on it.
Yeah, I don't mind at all. I dove into the series starting out with Phantasy Star 1 on the Master System, which was awesome. You know, I've played a couple of 8-bit RPGs that tend to be headbangers, and I don't really mind that aspect of them so much. Phantasy Star 1 at least was a little bit linear in terms of its progression. There weren't a lot of places to get off track. I felt like the intentions of characters in that game were very well defined. And then going to Phantasy Star 2, I was thinking, this is going to be awesome. You know, the first one was so good, and then the second game started out really well, and then it all kind of ground to a halt. Everything just felt really boring. All it was dungeons. There weren't a lot of boss encounters. The enemy encounters were crazy. Like, encounter rates in retro games are always crazy, but this especially, when there was no lead up to anything else. And so the game dragged for 2 whole months. I played that on stream twice a week for 2 months, 3 to 4 hours at a time. And I was just ready for it to be finished so much sooner than it was. And I would have really loved if it had had a little bit more of a narrative in it, I guess. That's what was really missing for me at the end of the day. So it was just a very long slog for not very much at the end. And it felt like a little bit of a waste of my time, which was unfortunate because I was really looking forward to more Phantasy Star.
It's one of those games you probably just have to get through to get to the sequels that are supposedly better. And I know in your review you mentioned that if you had played this as a kid or whatever, or way back when it came out, that you may not have even continued on to the Phantasy Star 3 and 4, which are supposedly much better, you know, which is an interesting point, I thought, you know.
Well, yeah, because you kind of hope that you're going to light a fire. And there's so many stories that are told incrementally like that, you know, like a sequel would be a stop on the way of a larger story. But back then you never even knew if the next game was coming or not. Is it going to ever happen? So the way that game ended was just so atrocious. You know, if they had ended it that way after having a really great story all the way throughout and just kind of put a bookend on it, that was a bit of a
So
cliffhanger.
did it ended on a cliffhanger then?
Kind of. They didn't
Yeah,
really
okay.
explain anything. There wasn't much of a resolution there. It was just so
Just kind of
awful.
ended.
Yeah, it just kind of it went downhill and kept going downhill, and I was thinking this can't be it. And then the credits rolled, and I thought, okay, then
Yeah,
there's
it's
2 months of my life.
if you look at the footage I'm playing, it's like it's a dungeon, and they're getting attacked over and over again. That's my memory of the game, was these maze-like crazy dungeons and just constant battles. And yeah, you mentioned in your review that there's really in combat, there's no background really. It's just kind of a wireframe screen, so there's not even any diversity there when you're fighting, and you spend the majority of your game in a battle screen. So it gets pretty boring looking at that over and over again, for sure.
Exactly. And not just the battles too, but all of the dungeons look the same. There wasn't a lot of variety, like maybe a bit of a palette swap here and there with walls and foreground features, which was also really obnoxious. If they weren't confusing enough already, just put a bunch of stuff to obscure your view of where you're going on top of that. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Very boring. I felt it was very boring, and I'm sorry for anyone's feelings I've hurt by saying that.
Yeah.
But good Lord, I would never play it again. You could twist all
Yeah.
my arms. I wouldn't do it.
You made it a lot farther than I did. I probably made it, I don't know, 10 hours into the game or something. I'm like, I'm done with it. I can't do it anymore. Yeah, so.
I've beaten it twice, for the record.
Of course you have. All right, Andrew, so what's your thoughts on Phantasy Star 2? You like it?
I do like it. I think I started off with Phantasy Star 1 and then moved on to 2. And I agree, the graphics you would expect a lot more. You expect a lot more with the characters and the story. So I do agree with that. But I think that whole wire, frame thing and the theme of the game, it's very cyberpunky. I really like that. And I like the crazy dungeons. Yeah, the dungeons are fun. But the overlays when you're walking around, when you can't see where you're going, that does suck. And the encounter rate is quite high.
Yeah.
And you get lost. You're like, okay, I got to fight another battle. Now, where am I? I'm lost.
What would be the best way to play a game like this is on an emulator with the speed increased, that would get you through it way faster, as opposed to playing. I'm sure Goriya played it on the actual cart, on the actual console, because I know that's what she usually does. So did you play it that way?
I did, yeah.
Of course,
I got a copy of it. I thought this is going to be a great investment. I'm going to play this cool game, and then there that was.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting. So Andrew likes Phantasy Star, and Goriya doesn't, and I don't. Yeah. So okay,
it's funny. I don't like the third one.
So you don't like the third one?
1, 2, and 4. I hate the third one.
Okay, interesting.
They dropped the ball. So I want to know. I'm curious what she thinks when she plays 3.
Well, we'll find out when she plays it, if she can stomach her way into it eventually.
I'll also just mention briefly, and I know that we're talking about not playing any modern games, but I played a modern game for a retro console recently called Lizard for NES, which is a homebrew game, which was a really cool adventure platformer that just kind of blew me away. That's something I wasn't really expecting to kind of sweep me off my feet, but there was a stream viewer who actually created the game who sent me a copy of it. So I got to experience that on stream, and it was my first NES homebrew that I ever played, and it was a fantastic experience. I loved that too.
Okay. Is that it right there? The footage playing?
Yeah.
That's the game? Okay. So it's a pretty simple platformer then?
It is, in a sense. The synopsis of it is more or less you're putting on a lizard and going on an adventure. So there's different lizard suits that have different types of abilities that you're able to exploit in different areas. So one of them, for example, lets you bounce a little bit further than you normally could jump. One of them gives you the ability to melt things. It's kind of, I don't want to say Metroidvania because you don't get to retain what you find. You have to kind of explore areas with different suits. And overall, it's just a really nice, well done, polished game. The guy that did it all on his own, and he wrote all the music for it. And the design is really good, and it was great as a blind playthrough for streaming too, like just to interact with an audience and pick people's brains on what to do next. It was.
Did you get the
really
cartridge, the actual cart?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got the actual cartridge, and it's all new materials, so no scavenging for preparing. Like a reproduction cartridge from older games.
Oh, that's
which
good.
I thought
So
was
new,
really
yeah,
great.
okay, yeah, that's good. I play a lot of old or new games on old consoles too. I'm definitely into the homebrew and indie scene for that. So that's cool. I haven't played a lot of NES games, but I've played quite a few Genesis ones. Like Pure Solar being the big one. Have you played Pure Solar?
I have not. I've heard of it though.
You really should. It's especially being a Sega fan. I think you would probably enjoy it. It's a little the battles. Like most JRPGs, the battles get a little tedious after a while. But the story is very charming and it's very well done. Like by far the best homebrew / indie game on a retro console that I've ever seen. I think.
Fantastic. I'll keep an eye out for that one.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So thank you, Goriya. Andrew, let's move on to you, man. What have you been playing? I know you've been streaming lately. So.
Yeah, I've been streaming a lot of like DOS games. I think I did a 5-hour stream where we covered a collection of really bad licensed MS-DOS games. So properties like Wayne's World or like RoboCop. RoboCop 3 on DOS was just horrible. I think one of the ones that surprised me was there was a game for Homie D. Clown, the In Living Color skit. I don't know if you know who Homie D. Clown is.
Yeah.
But yeah, they made a DOS game based on him. And it's absolutely horrible. The music is just, what the heck? Let's see, Bill and Ted's Adventure. Yeah, so that was interesting. It's kind of weird because it's not like a console where you have the controller. You have just a limited number of buttons. So you can figure out the game, just jump into it. But with these old PC games, you have the whole keyboard, you have a mouse, and a potential joypad to be controlling the games. And I don't have the manuals, so I just download the game from these abandonware sites because no one's supporting these games anymore.
And no one's probably scanned the manuals for those games either, I would imagine.
Right. Now, you might get lucky, some do.
Yeah.
But you're lucky to have a manual. You're even luckier if you can find a walkthrough on some of them, but they don't have. I didn't get that far in Wayne's World.
Homie the Clown.
Yeah, Homie the Clown.
I got to look that one up too.
I know it. Game.
I know what it is, but I want to show it for us. So these games were all terrible, basically.
Yeah, they were all terrible. I think I did a rating, and I think the highest game rating out of 5 was like a 3. I think one may have gotten a 4, but that was.
Homie the Clown. It's like a point and click.
It's like a point and click.
Yep. Oh Lord, yeah.
But it's horrible. Yeah.
It looks pretty bad.
Yeah. So, I have been playing a new game too. I also play Path of Exile. They just had a new season.
Oh.
So I play that. But
that's
hardcore.
right. You do play Path of Exile. Yeah.
But I play hardcore. So if my characters die,
you're crazy, man.
Yeah.
I
get to like level 90. It's fun. It's not that bad.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And that game, Path of Exile, is free. It's a free-to-play game, right? And
free to play.
Yeah, okay. But there's a lot of cosmetic stuff. That's what supports the game, cosmetics, right? You can buy cosmetic stuff.
Cosmetics.
So I have to ask you, have you spent any money on cosmetic stuff for the game?
Yeah, I've been playing the game since 2013. I feel bad, so I wanted to give them some money to help support the game. They have a new season. It's called Delirium, but I don't know. It's kind of weird. They've been having server issues, I think, because everyone's at home now. They have nothing else to do. So they're all logging in and just crashing the servers.
And Path of Exile is a Diablo-esque type game, right?
It's like the developers, they really like Diablo 2. And they're like, man, we want to make our own game.
It's like Diablo
2. So it's kind of retro in a way. And if you look at the skill tree, it's like this big, giant, humongous skill tree. And it's just absolutely fun. You can just, if you're a real thinking person, you can plan out your character and stuff.
Yeah, I've seen the skill tree. It's insane. Like my brother played this game a lot. I have some other friends that have played it. I never have because I don't know. I played so much Diablo 1 and 2, and that kind of burned me out on this style of gameplay. Like I played Diablo 3 a couple of years ago for the first time, and I don't know. It was okay. I didn't think it was that great, honestly.
Yeah, Diablo 3 was kind of more arcadey, kind of not that fun. Yeah.
This looks pretty cool. I mean, it looks like it could be fun. It's a lot of stuff.
I recommend it if you're into that style.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a lot harder. And definitely play hardcore. Don't play softcore.
Dude, I can't play games in hardcore because it's like if you die, that's it. You lose all your progress. Like, I don't know, man. I get it. I get the thrill. I understand why people do it. But oh man, it's like I feel like a lot of that could be a whole topic that we could talk about.
That'd be a good podcast topic.
I think even Outer Worlds has a hardcore mode. Like most games, I think have hardcore modes now.
Yeah, they call them Iron Man sometimes, where like it automatically saves for you, and then you can just go back into the game. And
that's crazy, man. So
yeah.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Let's move on to Sorren. What have you been playing lately, man?
Hey, so obviously some more Baldur's Gate. Just been carrying on playing with that. But a game I've actually you've started it up as well, haven't you? Oh yeah, you're playing.
Yeah, I've been playing. I'm still playing with my friend. We'll be playing tonight after the podcast, actually.
Oh, nice.
Probably.
The other game that I've been playing is actually a re-release or a release on a new platform for the game. It came out about a year ago, I think, or maybe a bit less. But it's a game called 2 Point Hospital, which is essentially the kind of successor to Theme Hospital, if you remember that from back in the day. The hospital management sim game.
Yep.
So basically, I think it's like pretty much the same, or a lot of the same team of developers decided to make a new game, which is it's basically Theme Hospital 2. Like it is the exact same style of game, and it's got the same kind of humor, like the tongue-in-cheek humor and the kind of cartoony style. And yeah, so I had that on my PC when it first released on that platform, and then recently they've brought it to console, so I picked it up on the Switch.
Okay.
And it works really well. Like, obviously, these kind of games tend to more favor mouse and keyboard. But the controls they've implemented for console is really smooth. It's really nice. And it also helps when it's one of those kind of management games where you can pause time. So I find that, like, I mean, I like that anyway, like whether I'm playing on PC or not. But when you haven't got that worry of like, oh my god, I need to do stuff like now and now and now. Like if you can just go, right, okay, hang on, pause. Now I'm going to build a few rooms and then, unpause. There we go. Right. So yeah, it's really
you can decorate your office with plants. It looks like
it's like can really like just lay out the whole thing.
How much actual management is there of the hospital itself, like sick people coming in and all that? I'm curious, like how does that work?
Yeah, there's loads. You have to like so you have to kind of manage the flow of customers, I suppose, or patients,
clients.
Clients. So when they first come in, they've all got to go and see the reception, and then they've got to go and talk to a GP, and then when the GP hopefully diagnoses them, they can then get sent on to whichever room cures that thing. But you've got loads of other like factors of how good your GPs are at diagnosing people. So they might not be able to diagnose somebody because either you don't know enough about the illness they have, or your GP just isn't skilled enough. So as you get later into the game, you start opening up more and more things you can build, including things like training rooms and stuff like that. So you can then pay to get your staff trained up better, and you can put more into research, and so you're managing all of this as well as managing the like how green your hospital is, how warm your hospital is, how like readily available snacks and things are. Like, are your patients bored if they're waiting too long? And it goes really, really quite deep if you want. Like,
interesting.
Yeah, you can
put a TV in the waiting room and whatever, something like that.
Yeah, you can. Well, because it's I think because it's published, it must be published by Sega. A couple of the things you can get for the just like the waiting room areas are little arcade machines that play Sonic and stuff like that.
That's fun. That's cool. Of course.
So yeah, but yeah, okay. It's a really, really beautiful game. It's it's got that really nice kind of chilled and like tongue-in-cheek humor. Like it's not taking itself seriously. Like some of the illnesses are things like lightheadedness, and the person literally has a bulb for a head, and so to get cured, they have to unscrew their head and put a proper head in. Or there's just crazy things like that. Like just really tongue-in-cheek humor, and yeah, it's really nice.
Cool. Okay. Anything else you want to talk about?
No. It's mostly just that and Baldur's Gate that I've been playing. So yeah.
Okay. All right, then we will move on to me, and other than Baldur's Gate, which I've talked about extensively already, I've played one other game lately, and that game is a game that I've been wanting to play since it came out in 2013, but they just finished it this January, so I finally jumped in, and that game is Kentucky Route Zero. Have any of you heard of that game?
Heard of.
I would say it's like an atmospheric, surrealist, kind of whimsical type of game. It's definitely a point and click, but it's more like a point and click, but more of a like almost like a walking simulator. It's very obtuse, I guess is the word. Like nothing is really what it seems, and you're kind of just navigating around, and a lot of it is through dialogue. So a lot of it is almost like text adventure based. Like there's whole segments where it's just describing what's on screen through text. There is scenes like this, like you can kind of see where you're in a basement in this scene. The guy tells you to go look at his computer or something. You go and look at it. But basically you're a guy, Conway is his name. You're a truck driver, right? And so you're sent out to do your quote-unquote final delivery, and you're supposed to deliver to this place called 5 Dogwood Drive, but the only way to get to 5 Dogwood Drive is through Kentucky, is through Route 0, it's called. And Route 0 is this weird, mysterious road that people kind of talk about like it exists, but not really. But anyway, you find your way there, and you end up in all these different weird locations. You go into a mine and you find this girl named Shannon, and you go down into the mine, and you're on this mine cart riding around, kind of looking around. And if you turn your light off, you see all these ghosts floating around. And then there's a story about this bluegrass band that was playing in the mine, and they got trapped down there. And then when you leave the mine, there's like a scene in the foreground where the band starts playing. And it seems like that, where I would just stop what I was doing and I would just watch, and I'm like, this is really weird and creepy and awesome. Like there's these musical segments it does. There's a scene in a bar with these musicians that your truck breaks down the side of the road, and these musicians are passing by on a bike, motorcycle, and they stop and they're like, hey, we need an audience for our show. We'll help you fix your truck, and you come to our show. You go to the show and it's at a bar and there's nobody there. So you're the only ones watching the show. So the show starts, like the roof lifts off the building, and the stars are shining and the moon, and they're singing the song, and you get to pick the lyrics of the song as it goes, and they sing it. It's really cool. Like just weird, just surreal, wacko stuff like that, man. It's such a hard game to explain, but it's so neat and so beautiful. Like the art style it's 3D polygonal, but it zooms in and out a lot. So sometimes you're zoomed way out and you can see a whole big scene. Other times, like the scene that's on the screen right now, is that you zoom way in. It's great to just turn on late at night. I turn off all the lights, I sit, I play it, lean back in my chair. I kind of just get lost in this game. It's really trippy and really strange. And I imagine if you were smoking pot or something, or doing some other sort of psychedelic drug, it would really blow your mind. It's that sort of game. You can talk to your dog. You have a dog. You can name him at the beginning, and you can talk to the dog, but it doesn't do anything. It's like you're just talking to your dog, like you would talk to a dog. The dog doesn't respond. You just have dialogue options for the dog, So it's really cool. It takes place in Kentucky, obviously. And I guess fictional places in Kentucky that don't really exist. But there is a Route 65 in Kentucky that you're driving through. But I love it, man. It's on Switch, and they finished it recently. It's been in development for 7 years, and I remember hearing about it back in 2013. And I thought, this sounds amazing, but it's still in development. I'm going to wait. So I waited for 7 years.
That's a long time.
It was a long time. And I'd forgotten about it, but saw that they had finished it. And I'm like, oh, I got to play it, man. So
must be a small team.
Yeah, it's an indie game. It was Kickstarted actually in 2013, I think. Small team. They did it in Unity. It's great, man. It's not for everybody. I definitely have seen some people that were like, I don't get it, and I don't like it. And I get that, I usually, the funny thing is, like with movies, I usually hate movies like this that are very obtuse and very artistic and very strange. But for games, I kind of love it. I think in this one, it's the atmosphere. I think I love the most. These kind of dark, strange atmospheres. I'm just a sucker for, I just love that kind of stuff. So anyway, Kentucky Route Zero is great. Pick it up if you can. It's on Switch. You can get the whole game on Switch. I don't remember how much it is. I don't think it costs that much at this point, but very, very interesting, trippy, surreal, atmospheric game for sure.
Yeah, I like the art style.
Yeah, the art style is super cool. All right, so that being said, let's move on to our first discussion topic, which is playing we'll change it from only to playing mostly retro games in the modern era, since both of you, both Goriya and Andrew, were admitted to playing modern games lately. So anyway, yeah. What would it be like if you ignored new game releases? How would that affect your perspective on gaming in general? What advantages and disadvantages would this create for you as a gamer? Well, our guests today, Hungry Goriya and Andrew Haden, are people who primarily play games that most people would consider old, perhaps even ancient by some people's standards. While it's fairly common for many people nowadays to mostly play newer titles, we thought it would be fun to kind of flip the script a bit and talk about what it would be like to only play older games, or in this case, I guess, mostly play older games. So, Goriya, why don't you start us off and just tell us why it is that you're attracted to older games and why that's, the majority of what you play nowadays.
Well, I guess a good place to start would be when I was younger as a kid. And so I kind of grew up with the same 3 consoles for most of my childhood, which was primarily NES, Sega Genesis, and I had a Game Boy. I got that when I was around 12 years old. And I was 12 years old in 1998, so probably well into the life of the Game Boy. So I was always kind of behind everybody else in terms of what they were playing. And it got even worse because I didn't get another console until I was 16, and that was the PlayStation 2. So long story short is that I missed out on everything in between. And of the ones that I actually owned at the time, I had a couple of games for them, and that's literally all that I played. So I didn't get to experience pretty much anything. I feel like I always put it like I lived under a rock during those times, the dark ages, if you will, where I just didn't get experienced in gaming very broadly. So as soon as I was able to start kind of looking into games a little bit more and finding out about all of these really great experiences that other people had had growing up, I thought, gosh, am I ever late to this party? I really have to get at that door and start knocking and get in there. And game collecting kind of took off for me as well. So especially perusing through RPG libraries and learning about all of these games that other people just adore, right? Like things like the Final Fantasy games and stuff like Secret of Mana, and I could go on and on. Chrono Trigger, all of that. I hadn't even touched any of that by the time I was probably in my mid-20s. So just started scooping it all up and really started to experience it now. So it was very much a big delay. And on the PC side, growing up too, we never had a very good PC. Like I was still using a compact Presario with Windows Millennium Edition in the mid 2000s. Like I went to university.
Compact Presario. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was not able to run anything even relatively modern or even older stuff very well. Like there were all these compatibility issues. So yeah, I didn't end up really getting into retro gaming until, well, I shouldn't say I didn't get into it, not really as deeply as I would have wanted to until recently. So things have kind of started to take off, and that's where my focus has been, kind of catching up almost on things everybody's already played for at least 20 years. And also I've somehow managed to stay unspoiled on a lot of games. Like I could play something like Final Fantasy VII. I know about the one part, right? And I'll just leave it at that, right? The one thing.
Of course, the one thing that everybody knows, yeah.
Exactly. But like I could play that game and still feel shocked and appalled and surprised as somebody playing through it back whenever it came out, because I've just been under this little rock for so long.
Have you played Final Fantasy VII, or you haven't played it yet?
Not yet, no. I just actually...
Will you play the remake, or will you play the original first?
Definitely the original. I don't think I could go for the remake, only because I've had the original since I was probably about 18, 19 years old, and I've just never played it. It's one of those things, like, and it's still a habit I have of buying games, and then they just sit on my shelf. So I've played Final Fantasy 8, 9, and 10. I started with 10 and worked my way backwards. Didn't get to 7, and then started at the other end. So I've played 1, and then recently 6, and 4 somewhere in between. But that's it so far for that series.
So was that a necessity? Do you think that you are drawn to older games because you weren't up? You know, you said you didn't have a very good computer. You said you were 12 in 1998. Okay, so yeah. In 1998, playing the Game Boy or the NES or even the Super Nintendo at that point would have been passé. The 64 was out. PlayStation had been out for 3 years. I mean, so do you think that was the reason why? And it's still the reason why that you go so far back as opposed to going forward with newer games?
I I think absolutely that's the case. I got my first SNES when I was 17 years old for $5 from a guy that I worked
Wow.
with. And I had been kind of going to my friends' places when I was a kid, kind of almost leeching off of them and saying, can we play Super Bomberman? What about Super Mario World? And, I'd dabble a little bit, but I guess my parents just never really wanted to get more games. And even at the times when games were really cheap and things were going out of business, I didn't hear a thing about it. So it was so silly because everyone's like, oh, I scored real big on collecting when I was young and got all these games when such and such store went out of business. And I'm like, where was I? Like, what was I doing?
Yeah.
Why did no one tell me about this?
Yeah,
So,
I wish I would have taken advantage of that too.
yeah. So I guess like a little bit out of necessity, but I mean, I played the games that I had to death. I wasn't kind of averted to going to other hobbies or anything like that. It's just, I just really loved the games that I had. So I just played the heck out of them. And that was enough for me for a long time.
Okay. What about you, Andrew? What draws you still to this day to your rack of DOS and PC games back behind you there? Obviously, you admit that you play games like Path of Exile on occasion and some newer stuff here and there.
Very rarely, though.
But yeah, very rarely. So why? Why is that, man? What is it about Hawaii that's done this to you?
Hawaii? I don't know. We haven't got a new game in 20 years over here.
Exactly. You're stuck on an
Everything's
island,
been
man.
delayed.
Yeah.
Yeah, Super Nintendo is brand new. I know what you're talking about. What I like about it, I think, yeah, kind of the same boat. Like a lot of the games I just, missed out on. I think is no one could have played every single game back in the day. So you have this huge collection of games to just dive into that has, have been around for so long. So that for me, I just like finding old games that no one's really playing anymore or no one even really played and just getting to experience it. Plus, a lot of them tend to be free.
That's true.
At least
why DOS though? Because
cheap.
DOS, because DOS games are cheap. Is that why? Why DOS?
Why DOS? Well, these games aren't cheap. I'll tell you that.
Not full in box. No, because they're kind of rare now.
Yep.
My parents threw all my DOS boxes, man. My parents threw all that stuff out. All my Ultima, Ultima 7 boxes with the cloth maps. That stuff.
I'm so sorry, Zach. That's devastating.
It is. They could be here on my wall like you.
Yeah.
What is it about DOS specifically in your case that draws you to DOS games, do you think, as opposed to the new hotness, to Doom Eternal? You're not going to play Doom Eternal, right? Or will you?
I did play Doom 2016.
Okay, you did.
I liked
it.
I
Doom.
hated Doom 3. I didn't play Doom 3. But
I like Doom 3. Doom 3 was slower paced and more survival horror than
exactly
just
why
fast action. Okay, yeah, it was different. But anyway, Doom's a bad example because it's a retro franchise that's been brought to the modern era. So
I know. Yeah.
What is it about DOS games that draw you?
Well, I think that's a good point right there. Like, I think DOS was just innovating and was just setting the standard. We look at today, the biggest game that everyone's excited about is an old DOS game right now. And
that's a good point, man.
Yeah, it goes to show that these things, they're quality games. I think the big issue is probably accessibility. I think trying to go back into a PC mindset of you have to read the manual, you have to do all this stuff. I think that kind of scares people away. But I like all that stuff. I like that I can go into the setup of the game and change the sound card if I want to hear. Like I was playing Mega Man X on DOS the other day, and you can change the music setting, so you can have it be an ad lib or a Yamaha, or you can use MIDI. You can hear the soundtrack in a different way. But the worst was when I tried playing it on the PC speaker, which is just awful. It was just sounded like an alarm was going off the whole time.
Yeah, right. Oh man.
Yeah, and the other thing I guess is I got a new toy, right?
Uh-oh.
You can breathe. Here's the thing: you can breathe life into these old games new ways. So I've been playing Terminal Velocity or Descent. These are 3D games. Yeah, they're kind of like a flight simulator, but it's more like a game. I guess you can think of Afterburner if you're used to that game. But I bought a joystick. Now this is a very modern. It's a Thrustmaster.
Thrustmaster.
Oh my!
I don't know if you want to censor that.
Where's Daria when we need her, man, with the
Oh,
joke about
boy.
that?
Right?
She'd probably call it titular, I'm sure.
She probably would.
But yeah, so this thing is great, right? So
Yeah.
it's a modern joystick. It's USB. This would never work, on old 486 processor computer.
Right.
But with I use DOSBox, which is like a virtual machine, and it just it says, okay, I see what you're doing, and let's make this work. So I can play this. You can turn it that way. Ooh, it lights up too. And so it's been a lot of fun. It's like I experiencing
Dude,
these old games. In
you
new
need
ways.
to play Wing Commander or play Privateer.
Yep.
Wing Commander,
Yep,
Privateer.
I need to do
Oh,
that.
man.
Yeah.
All right, so I sort of see where you're coming from now with this. It's an adventure for you going through these, and you're right about a lot of these games are not accessible by today's standards. Like I've talked about it, but I was playing Might and Magic World of Zine lately, at least a couple months ago, and oh man, it's like I think I had 12 different tabs open on my browser, just with different guides and with the weapon guides and with the maps and it's like, it's just crazy. Like I don't have the time to just sit there and bump against the wall so I can figure out where the hidden pathway is to beat the dungeon, that I'm in. So I just had it open, and when I got stuck, I'd give myself 5 minutes. So I got stuck for 5 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna look it up. What do I do? So a lot of people don't have the patience for that, but for you like that sort of thing, but
yes.
You don't like which version of the Draken? It's all the versions of Draken that don't have maps, right? Except for the Super Nintendo one, right? Don't all the PC versions don't have maps? That's crazy, man. Yeah, we're talking about Draken. Yeah, you've got it there. Okay, Draken. I've talked about Draken before. I love it. Andrew loves it too. It's our Draken brought us together as friends. Yes, it did. We both like Draken. I think I watched one of his videos and I saw it on his shelf and I was like, oh, I got to talk to this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Super Nintendo version.
Yes, that's true. It was my first Super Nintendo game, that and Mario World, man. So it holds a special place and I still enjoy it. Sorren, you haven't said anything. What do you think about this? Obviously, you're a retro player. What draws you to retro games in particular?
So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't qualify myself as like as much of a retro player as you guys, but
well, you're playing Baldur's Gate. I mean,
yeah, that's true. That's true. No, I suppose probably the thing that kind of draws me to playing retro games is the same thing that draws me to playing certain indie games that even come out now, which is that they all. Oh, lovely.
There it is.
Yeah, so I'm just being shown the big box Baldur's Gate. That's lovely.
You're playing the original? Sorry.
No, I'm playing the enhanced edition.
Oh, okay. Well, that counts. That counts.
Yeah. But yeah, so the thing that I think is really good with a lot of retro games and some modern games is that they're so short. So like there's especially a lot of the old console games. Like you could complete Sonic the Hedgehog in like an hour. I mean, but people obviously speedrun it probably even faster than that. But you could comfortably play, like even if you're not trying to speedrun, there's a load of these old games that you can just comfortably play in an afternoon and fully complete.
That's true.
And I think that's definitely what attracts me. Is like I'll play a retro game because I can play it for a small amount of time and experience pretty much everything that game has to offer. And it's just a fun, fun few hours.
That's true. Yeah, retro console games particularly. Yeah, probably a lot of DOS games less so because DOS. I think DOS games, like Andrew said, they were experimenting on PC. I feel like back then a lot more than they weren't. Consoles were very. It was a platformer. It was a shmup. It was a very specific type of game. RPGs got more in depth later, but even then. Console RPGs, I guess because they were predominantly Japanese at the time, we had the JRPG style, which was much different than the CRPGs on PC, the dungeon crawlers and even the Ultima style games, that were isometric, I guess, sort of, So, Goriya, let me ask you this. What modern stuff have you played, I guess, in the last couple of years, like more recently? And why did you make the decision to try something newer? You said you had played Dragon Age, right? You played Dragon Age Origins?
Yeah, it was Dragon Age Origins for Xbox 360.
Okay, why did you choose to play that?
Well, honestly, my Xbox 360 came to me in an interesting way. It was given to me, foisted upon me, if I may, by somebody who just said to me, hey, I have an extra Xbox and some games, so please take these. And so it was more of a gift rather than me seeking it out. But something like Dragon Age, I had just heard such good things, and I love RPGs, and that kind of storytelling in games is really great. And I've heard such good reviews about it that I thought, well, I might as well give this a try. I struggled tremendously playing a modern game like that, going from like an RPG, like a turn-based game, to something that's more action-oriented and where you have to manage your party in a lot more of an intense way. I got bowled over. Like poor Alistair. I don't know if you guys have played the game.
Yes, I've played
it. He was always dead. I couldn't save him. Like there was nothing I could do to save him. It seemed like I could get him all the best equipment, and he was just always wrecked. And the most interesting part for me was just how deep the game got in terms of character development and interactivity.
All the romancing options, and
that was a special time, I would say. Like that's the first game that I ever played
with romancing options.
With romancing options, and I kind of sat there and thought, I don't know if I like this. It's so weird. Like when they cut to the scenes, weird. And I'd be like, wow, this is uncomfortable. I don't like this very much. But
it wasn't the earliest. Yeah, it wasn't the earliest example for me for romancing. I think Ultima games had romancing options, right, Andrew? I know the Ultima 7s did. Yeah,
Ultima
so
7.
way back. But it was the first. It was probably the first modern-ish game I played with heavy romancing. Although I think Mass Effect, I think I played Mass Effect before that. But yeah, you said it's uncomfortable. Yeah, it was very uncomfortable because I'm married and I'm like pursuing this girl in this game. This feels very strange, you know. And like I had a whole love triangle going on, you know. It was I think between she's there in the scene here that I'm playing. What's her name? Yeah, Morrigan and the other girl, you know, the redhead girl. I can't remember their names, but
Was it Liliana or something?
Yeah. There was like a love triangle going on. Brings out some emotions, you know.
Well, it was just like compared to what I had played before, which was pretty much in terms of romancing options was Harvest Moon. Like it's vastly different. Like you're no longer just giving somebody an egg and saying, "Here you go, please like me." It's hey, let's get busy.
Yeah.
In this hut while people are outside. It's just so strange. It was really weird.
Yeah.
I didn't like it.
Yeah. All right. So you played that out of happenstance again because you were given the 360 in the game and you're like, okay, I'll try this out, you know, basically.
Yeah. Like,
and this is when it came out, like around the time it came out, or was it years later?
I'm not actually sure when it came out. I think I played it when I was about 24 or 25. So probably around 2011, 2010, somewhere in there.
That's around when it came out, I think, around that time. Yeah. I want to say. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, apart from that, like I played Undertale, which is newish.
Okay. It's newish. It's very retro styled, but yeah, it is a new quote unquote new game.
Yeah. And Ori and the Blind Forest was another one that I played that was recent. And
I've been meaning to.
Yeah, and that was a fantastic game. But again, kind of played to a lot of what you would have seen in retro games, but just beautified and a little bit more complex, I guess, too, depending on how you look at it. But I really enjoyed that experience. That was kind of like the first exploration adventure platformer game that I ever tackled. Like I just played Metroid last year for the first time. So,
wow.
Something like that was just eye-opening. I thought, how many more games are there like this? Because like I said, I'm just so late to this gaming party. In general, everything is amazing to me still.
All right. Final thoughts. Anyone have any final thoughts they'd like to throw into this topic before we move on? Andrew.
Yeah.
I'll put you on the spot, man.
Okay. I guess the other thing I would say is, as far as accessibility on DOS games, I think that one way to bring people to playing those old games, instead of hitting, because like for walking, you have to use the arrow keys on the right side, and people are used to using their left hand with the WASD.
Yeah, the WASD.
Yeah. And you have to like hit enter to jump and space to fire and alt to do something else, and it's just all over the place. What I've been doing is I have this is my favorite controller is the ASCII pad. It's
yes,
Super Nintendo
with all the turbo buttons on it.
Yep, all the turbo buttons, including the start button has one. Me and my buddy Nefarious Wes, we both swear by this thing, and you can use a program called Joy to Key.
Yep.
Joy number 2 key.
Yep.
Yeah, and you can remap all the buttons here to mimic keyboard presses. And so I'll play like Commander Keen or Jill the Jungle or some platformer game on DOS, and it's like playing it on the Super Nintendo, and
that's awesome.
Yeah, so I think that's a great way.
That was a major problem back then. Gravis pads, they didn't always work. You had they plugged in the serial ports back then, right? A lot of them, so it wasn't even guaranteed to work. And trying to play Crystal Caves or like you said, Commander Keen or Jazz Jackrabbit, one of those type of platformer games with a keyboard, was like, forget it, But you're right now. You can plug in virtually anything. I mean, I plug in my, I got a Genesis adapter from my PC. I'll plug that in and play other games that aren't Genesis games, with my pad. So.
Yeah, it makes playing retro games in the modern era so much more fun.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Goriya, final thoughts?
I guess I've just enjoyed kind of the resurgence of retro gaming in modern day a lot. Seeing a lot of these games that I'm playing for the first time coming around and having a new generation of people being able to approach them and also experience them too makes me feel a little bit less excluded, which is kind of nice. But as well too, it's just great to see people being able to play them in a way that is accessible, right? And kind of piggybacking on Andrew's point is just having those things not just be available through original hardware, which is hard to come across, and collecting is obviously getting to be more and more unattainable for some people, depending on what you're looking for, of course. But I've just really enjoyed kind of seeing it come back around and come back into the mainstream and seeing people just fall head over heels for it. So it's kind of nice to be a part of that, even though I'm not doing it the way most people are at this point. But
well, you and me are both, I think, both doing that. Behind me, you can't really see it, but I've got my Frame Meister and all my consoles, my retro consoles hooked up. And I'm all about playing on original hardware when I can, But you're right, it is unattainable mainly because of monetary reasons now, just because collecting is getting so expensive. I mean, Super Nintendo, even Genesis, there's games that are getting up there in price, so.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's showing any signs of stopping either. So I'm happy that I have what I have. And it's great that people who might not necessarily be able to find something rare can play it a different way, however they can. So it's nice to see that.
I hear that a lot, though. I hear a lot of people, that's why they played older games, was because that's what they had. I think Mark, or one of our other co-hosts, Mark, had a similar experience where he's from Idaho, and he always brings that up. I'm from Idaho, man, and that's why we're so far behind everything, So it's like, so he played what he had. All right, Sorren, final thoughts.
I mean, mostly kind of mirroring what's already been said. I think, for whatever reason, be it probably financial that the companies do it, but the constant bringing older games back to the forefront again through compilation discs or things like NES Online and SNES Online on the Switch, things like that. There's loads of ways that companies kind of keep making dollar on their old games, but it has the kind of nice effect of bringing those games to a new audience. So, I know Justin has said on other podcasts about how he'll play, so he's starting to introduce some of these games he played as a kid to his kids, and they're seeing these games for the first time with fresh eyes and that, but it still draws them in because some of those games, they are just timeless. You can play them. It doesn't matter that some of them are like 20, 30 years old. You can put on Super Mario World on the SNES
we talked about Super Mario World. I think it was the last episode, maybe, or the one before.
Yeah.
We brought that specifically up as a timeless game that pretty much anyone, even today, can pick up, any kid, and be entertained by it, just because it was so well designed and so well done. Yeah. It's like not only just so well crafted and that, but also they've managed to make it so I don't think anyone, if you introduce that game to any kid nowadays, I don't think there's one kid that would look at it and go, ugh, that's a bit ugly. Whereas if you showed them some old games, that's definitely going to be their initial reaction. Yeah. But Super Mario World still looks beautiful by today's standards. It helps that it's come full circle. A lot of indie games mimic that. Even Nintendo, and they've the new Super Mario Brothers games are, technically 2D side-scrolling type games. So it has come back around.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
All right, cool. Well, we will wrap up our first topic, and we will take a quick break. And when we come back, we will discuss our second topic. Be right back. We're back. And now our next topic is retro games that shocked us. In the case of this topic, we're going to refer to the term shock as literally any aspect of a retro game that made us do a double take, whether it's something truly shocking like gore or sex or amazing graphics or sound, or maybe the game had a lot of hype and it kind of fell flat for you. Maybe it's something you never played younger and you played it now and it shocked you for some reason because you're like, oh, wow, literally anything potentially shocking is on the table. So why don't we start off? Sorren, you came up with this topic, so why don't you start us off, man?
Yeah, okay. So I've got a few suggestions here. So for mine, they're all positive shocks. Like, these were all pleasant surprises, and I'd say all of these have become games that I like and would go back to and play. So the first is Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Now, it's probably going to shock some people, but I managed to miss a lot of Castlevania when it first came out. So other than kind of very lightly dipping my toes in like a little bit of Castlevania 1, and I mean literally like playing 1 or 2 goes, my first Castlevania wasn't any of the originals. So my first one was actually Symphony of the Night, because by that time it wasn't when that came out, so it was well past then, and the Castlevania franchise had already become quite a big thing. So I'd heard people saying this was like an amazing one, so I went back and played it, and I went into it knowing, right, this is a PS1 game, and I kind of had expectations of what I would have, or what experience I would get because of that. And then it just kind of like there was a slow shock initially, which was just every now and again kind of being pleasantly surprised by things. So like, realizing like, oh, there's, well, it was like, it was just like just a gradual kind of increase of like, oh, cool, like there's a really big map. And
So
then
it was a slow burn.
Cool. It's like, yeah. So it was just seeing like, oh, there's like these nice little RPG elements where you can get different capes and things, and they'll give you different stats and different weapons, and then you unlock these different abilities, and so that was kind of a nice slow burn. But then the really pleasant shock came like at what I assumed was the end of the game, and I don't want to I don't really want to spoil this, but
Bro, this game's
so
been
I'll
out
try.
for 20-something years. So good.
Yeah, but like it's so good. If you can go into this game playing it and not know, then it's really good. But basically,
I probably don't know because I've never played it.
Oh,
I've never played it. I've never played it.
Well,
I was never a huge Castlevania guy.
It.
Yeah,
you need to go and play it.
Is it on Switch?
I don't. Ooh.
Maybe the Switch collection. I'm not too sure.
I don't know. I don't
that's
think it's on that. I don't think it's on that. But I'm sure I've heard rumor that they are thinking about trying to get it on there.
That would entice me to play if it was.
Just, I suppose it's just down to like who technically has the rights, which I assume is Konami. But yeah. So basically, I won't spoil it. But there was a point that I got to where I was like, okay, this is probably the end of the game. Like this is, I'm done now. And it wasn't, and it was not the end of the game by quite a long way. So I was like, oh wow, I thought I'd completed this game. No, there's still absolutely tons left to do. So that was a really good one. One of the other ones I had is, again, it's a game that I actually played much later than when it originally came out. And it's a game that you might not have heard of, and I don't know if it's one of those ones where maybe it only got a European release, or maybe it might be called something different in America, but it's on the SNES, and it's a game called Vegas Stakes. I don't know if anyone's heard of that.
Heard of it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Vegas Stakes. Like that sounds like a game that you would find for $1 at Goodwill or something. Like one of the crappy, games where you're like, oh, this garbage is like a Bassmasters or something. You're like, oh, they're a sports game.
Exactly, yeah. Like I was like, when I went into this game, I was not expecting a lot. I knew that it was going to be a game centered around gambling and different casino games. But generally, my experience up until that point of any kind of casino style games on old consoles is they were kind of just like a compilation of casino games. When I played Vegas Stakes, I was really like surprised by the fact that there's actually like a story to it, and it's like a little RPG.
I'm seeing a cyborg character.
Yeah, so you basically the story is you're a group of friends who are like all traveling to Las Vegas to kind of try your luck and try and make it big and make your riches. And so you go in, and I think you've all got $1,000 together each, and you're going to go in and try and work your way up. So you literally go into like a crappy casino. That's really like, one of the ones that would be the low end ones on the Vegas Strip, and you've got to work your way up and build your money up, and you can like win tournaments, or you can just play slots, or you can do the different casino games, but you're trying to hit a certain amount in your bank, which will then mean a better casino will say like, oh, you can come and gamble at our casino if you want now, and then all the casinos are like different themes and stuff. So that's why you just saw a robot, because like that one, the clip we're watching at the minute must be the futuristic casino.
Okay,
but it was really good, and you get like you'll interact with characters that will like start giving you slack talk and stuff. Like you'll be playing poker, and they'll interact with you, and you'll kind of build up a little bit of a rivalry. And it's just, it was way more in-depth than I was expecting, because I was expecting just a compilation of casino games.
Dude, it's called Vegas Stakes. I mean, like I said...
Yeah.
It's just...
Yeah, I wasn't expecting an RPG.
Hey, I'll tell you what, I was just shocked when I put the footage on, hit the little button to move forward, and I see a cyborg head sitting there talking in a Vegas Stakes game. I'm like, what the hell is this? The Universal Soldier there or something, man. That's funny.
Yeah, it totally threw me, because at the time I was just trying to find new stuff to play on the SNES. Like I had a real, I was big on the SNES at that time, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to see what else is on here. And I thought, oh, okay, a little, game with gambling in it. I'll just try that out. And then it was this. It was like a little RPG. So yeah, really enjoyed that, and would highly recommend anyone going back and giving that a whirl. And the final one for me is one I played really recently, and it's probably I'd say it's probably one of the games that that is like the oldest that I've played most recently, if you know what I mean. Like there's the biggest gap between when it originally came out and when I actually gave it a go. And it is, I believe it is Super Mario, I think they call it Super Mario Land on the Game Boy, on the original Game Boy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's Super Mario Land 2, which I think it might have a subtitle of like Wario something or other, or Coin Quest, or
the 6 golden coins.
There you go. That's it. Yeah, I knew there was some subtitle. Yeah, was it the quest for the 6 golden coins? That's it. Yeah. So I have no idea why. I just randomly decided, I was on a little bit of a kind of a go with my Game Boy, and I was like, I'll try and find some cool games for that. I figured, okay, a Mario game is going to be good, so picked it up, and I couldn't believe like how different this is to all the other ones.
It looks like he's on the moon, jumping around or something.
Yeah,
low gravity and everything. Yeah,
like when you consider when this game came out, and the kind of the years preceding, and maybe the couple of years after.
When did it come out? Because the original Mario Land was a launch title on Game Boy, right? Like pretty close, I think. It came 89. Because Super Mario Land, the first one, I got it with my Game Boy in 89. Yeah, my uncle got it for me. So,
but either way, like the games that all the Mario games you'd had, or was it 92? Okay, so yeah, so that is before N64 then. So all the Mario games that you'd kind of had, they'd been like very similar themes. There was the kind of general like plains, and then there was like the underground levels, and it didn't matter really what Mario game you were playing, you were kind of seeing a lot of the same things followed through, and then just other little bits added. But with this one, I put it on and like, yeah, there's obviously it's 6 golden coins, so you go to 6 worlds and go and try and get the coin from each world to unlock the final boss fight. And I think all 6 of those worlds are nothing I've ever seen in a Mario game. They're all like, like one is in space on the moon and that. There's one where you're like, I think is this the footage where, yeah, you're like really tiny and so everything is really big, so you're running around on books. And
there's books, yeah.
And there's like a toy world as well where you're kind of, it even looks like you're running about on Lego and stuff like that. Like it's so different to the other Marios, but obviously just feels like a Mario game.
It looks, there's similarities to Super Mario World for sure. It looks like he's in a ghost house right here, but it's like an 8-bit version of Super Mario World. Obviously, with some different elements that we kind of haven't seen. I gotta be honest with you, I didn't even know this game existed. So this is totally new for me. It's pretty. Yeah, it looks cool. Definitely.
Yeah,
it's a good Mario game.
Just so different to the others, and bearing in mind as well that, like, wrongly or rightly, my kind of expectation of Game Boy games is generally that if there is the same game on another platform, this is basically going to be a condensed, simplified version of that game. So I kind of went into this just assuming this was going to be like a condensed version of one of the other Mario games, because that is what you get with anything else like that released on multiple platforms. But I didn't think that this was like exclusively made for the Game Boy and had all of this unique content.
He's for reference, Mario has rabbit ears on his hat. It looks like rabbit ears, and he's inside of a whale right now, like in a whale's stomach, it looks like.
Yeah, there's just so much new and different stuff in this that just doesn't seem to be in any of the others.
Yeah, that's interesting. Goriya, what about you? What has shocked you in a retro game?
Well, I have a couple of different examples here. One of them was a Dreamcast game called Elemental Gimmick Gear. And
what the heck is that?
That is one of the very few RPG-like games that was released for the system. And so I had been looking into RPGs, like I mentioned a while ago, just trying to see what was out there, especially for consoles that didn't have very many. And this game kind of came up, and everywhere that I looked, everyone was praising it. Such a good game, so much fun, really enjoyable. And then I played it. And it was visually beautiful, and it had one of the most amazing soundtracks, but it was just so convoluted, and it was shocking how much of a contrast there was between like this very aesthetically nice game and then how poorly it played. Because I was expecting it to be a phenomenal adventure.
It looks very unique. I can't think of any other game to even compare it to. Like, I'm looking at it, and it's very colorful. Like you're like he looks kind of like Marvin the Martian, except he's got a knight's helmet on, and you're spinning around the floor. It's so hard to explain. Wow, this is a really strange, very strange game, but interesting.
It's like a top-down kind of RPG game that's very limited in terms of how you can actually fight anything. Like they give you this wimpy little shot that you can't quite get out there fast enough, and everything just pummels you and kicks your butt. But the music's really good while you're getting your butt kicked. So anyway, it was just a really big shock to me about just how I don't want to say it was bad, but how ungood it was based on how well received it seemed to be in various corners of the internet, because I was expecting something a lot different. And I guess that's kind of the experience I've had a lot coming back to games, where people have kind of established a little bit of an expectation for me about where I should be coming in and what I should be experiencing with a game because they experienced something. And then it's always just not quite what people want it to be for me. And so there's always this like hurt feelings, I think, on the parts of people who are like, well, I thought you'd really like this, Yeah. So
everyone's different. And the Dreamcast particularly is a very hyped system. I feel like it's the in system right now for people to praise and say, oh, there was all these innovative games on it. And granted, there was a lot of great games, but I think people put it on a pedestal. And I don't know, like Space Channel 5 is super unique, but I don't think it's that great of a game, honestly. Seaman is another example. I think I've talked about Seaman a couple times, where it's just like, what is this? Maybe some people like it, but it's really just out there, So I think the Dreamcast had so many different crazy ideas that people, I don't know, and some people like it, but like you're saying, it just wasn't for you, this particular game anyway.
Yeah. But I have some other examples of games that shocked me in a really great way. And one of them was actually Ultima 4. And I didn't play that on PC or any traditional means, but actually
there goes Andrew.
yeah, I got on the Master System with it, and it was
Master System.
Yeah, so it's apparently one of the most faithful console ports. It was so good, and I remember just thinking, "Oh, this is going to be awful." My boyfriend was saying to me, "You can't play this on stream. Like, you're going to struggle. People aren't going to want to watch necessarily. Like, there's such a big learning curve with this game." And I remember I just kind of dove in, and it took me a while. Like, I almost kind of just shot it off into a corner and said never again, but decided to actually stick it through with some good advice from people, and I fell in love with it, like head over heels, adored every moment after I finally got my bearings on what the heck I was supposed to be doing. And I would say it was a really good shock because it's also given me a good appreciation for other games, like other RPGs where there are all of these quality of life things built into the game. And I've never looked at another RPG the same way since playing it.
Yeah,
it was a good introspective experience too.
Yeah, Quest for the Avatar is a very important RPG because it established many of the tropes that we now have in RPGs, And a lot of people consider it the best Ultima game. I disagree, but there's a lot of people that think it's, I know me and Andrew probably, what's your favorite Ultima, Andrew?
6.
6, okay, that's right, yeah. False Prophet, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. 7 is my favorite, but it's. I didn't even know this game was ported to the Master System. I knew there was there an NES port of Quest for the Avatar?
There was, yeah. I haven't played that version,
but different,
I've heard
right?
It's very truncated. I think you can, instead of having 8 party members, I think you can only have 4. I don't know the details, but it looks very Final Fantasy like in terms of its aesthetic on the NES. So for console ports, the Master System version was apparently the most faithful. This is what I've been told because I haven't played it in another way, or any other Ultima game for that matter. That's the only one.
It's the only one you played. Oh,
so
man.
far, yeah.
You need to remedy that.
I know. I have Ultima 5 on my list coming up to play in the near future, nearish, like months to maybe a year, because I'm slow as molasses playing through games, it seems.
That's all right.
Yeah, but yeah.
Which system would you play that on?
Ultima 5, I'm thinking I have some kind of compilation for PC. I don't know which version of it it would come with, but I've got something hanging around. I haven't quite looked into what exact version it is, but yeah, whatever that one is, because
don't play the NES one.
No, that's what I've heard, and I would like to actually get the cartridge just because I love Ultima now. I'm an Ultima convert, as I've put it to people out there in the world.
Ultima's great, and I've played all of them except 5 and 6. So if you're going to stream 5, I'll probably watch it because I'd like to play it still. But yeah, me and Andrew are both big Ultima. We're always yelling at people, you need to play the Ultima games. They're some of the most important RPGs ever made, man. I mean,
no kidding.
Yeah, it's like, and in many ways they've been kind of forgotten to time. I know they're old and they're clunky, but particularly the Ultima 7s, which I've talked to death, or talked about to death, are just so expansive and so interactive, and so they're Skyrim in 2D, basically, is what they are. Or, I guess a better example would be the newer Divinity games, which were heavily inspired by the Ultima games, the Ultima 7s particularly. But that's cool. Yeah, I'm very happy that you brought up Quest for the Avatar. That's great.
Yeah, I've got 2 other games I wanted to mention quickly if there's time.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
One of them was a Gameboy RPG that I just happened to end up with. I bought one of my friend's game collections. I think I got something like 600 games and 20 consoles in our transaction. And one of the many Game Boy games that was in the pile there was called Great Greed, which was a fantastic turn-based RPG that kind of threw menu-based, turn-based RPG-ness conventions out the window and established kind of more of a real-time battle system. And I kind of went into this thinking, oh, it's just going to be like Final Fantasy Legend or some other kind of like basic turn-based clunky to manage game. And Great Greed totally swept me off my feet. It was so funny and the humor was awesome. They had really weird food themed stuff throughout the game. Like it was so strange. You're just on this adventure about pollution and every enemy you encounter is some kind of weird food that you have to murder in various ways. You fight laser discs later on, and like, I don't know, you just have to kind of see the random battles to really truly appreciate some of the naming conventions in it.
Why is
But
it
it was-
called Great Greed? Is that like is that a translation, something lost in translation, or is there like a good reason why it's called that?
I couldn't tell you. I think in Japanese it was like a rough translation to Vitamin Kingdom Story. So like more food oriented, and then ended up as Great Greed.
Vitamin Kingdom
overseas.
Story. I love these names, man. It's just
Yeah.
great.
But it was so cool, and I loved it. Like the music was good. It had a totally different feel than any other RPG that I had ever played, and totally blew my expectations out of the water in a very shocking way for Game Boy. And I think a lot of people write off Game Boy as just this piddly system that didn't have much to offer. But good Lord, like some of my best gaming experiences that I've had have come out of the Game Boy recently. And it's just been amazing to experience something like Great Greed.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah.
Okay. What's
And
your
then
last one?
Illusion of Gaia. So this is it's quite polarizing. This is the game that kind of sends me onto people's bad lists because, like Phantasy Star 2, I also didn't like Illusion of Gaia very much at all for many of the same reasons. But I guess playing through that with an adult brain kind of sent me into the game with different perspective than other people did maybe when they were younger. And thematically, the topics that come up in that game were just shocking, like in the most terrible ways. Like, I don't know how much I want to actually spoil, but some of the things around like child slavery and cannibalism and like the listlessness of just being like having starvation being thrust upon you, like such
Wow.
serious topics for a game about children going on an adventure. It was so weird. It just took this really hard left turn and kind of left me sitting there with a furrowed brow almost the entire time I was playing, thinking, what is this game and who is its intended audience? Because I don't think it was little kids. It was really strange to go through that one.
I have a story about Illusion of Gaia, and it's not really about the game itself, but this came out, 92, 93 maybe?
Yeah.
I was in middle school, and I had this friend who had some friends who were, they were trouble, just put it that way. So we'd go to Walmart sometimes, and they would try to encourage us to steal stuff. And I'm like, I'm not stealing stuff, man. You're crazy, you know? So back in those days, you could go up to, they still had the games in the, in the glass cases or whatever. But back then you could go up and say, hey, I want to check this game out. Can you get it out for me? Okay, sure. They'd hand you the game, right? Nowadays, they take it out, they take it over to the register, and they ring you up right away, right? Well, back then, they just hand you the game and walk away. So my buddy took it in the bathroom and took it out of the box and took it home, stole it. And so that was my experience with Illusion of Gaia. And I remember watching him play the game and feeling really guilty about it and being like, dude, this is so messed up, man. It's like, oh God, I'm seeing the footage now, and it's like bringing it back. It's bringing it back.
Oh no.
I'm sorry I brought it up.
No, it's okay. It's a story. I had to mention it.
It's crazy.
Anyway, I'm guilty by association, I guess. So, all right. Thank you, Goriya. I'll move on to some of mine. Mine are, I based it on graphics because I'm kind of a graphics whore. Like whenever I see something that looks amazing, it's always the first thing that stands out. But you know what? I didn't put this in my notes, but now that I'm thinking about it, and I've talked about this game before, is Rendering Ranger R2 on the Super Nintendo, which I had never heard of. I had never played until recently. It's one of those games that costs an insane amount of money. It's I don't know, thousands of dollars. There's only a small amount of copies made and only released in Japan. And I bought a repro cart once I saw it. I'm like, I have to have this. But it just looks amazing. It's a shmup run and gun hybrid, and it blew me away. Like the amount of shit on the screen for a Super Nintendo game, no slowdown at all, like none. And you'll see, I got some footage playing. You'll see, I'm trying to find. Yeah, look, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's a Super Nintendo game, and there's no slowdown with all the stuff on the screen. And the graphics, a lot of the graphics are pre-rendered, so it's got that. Some of the areas have like Donkey Kong Country kind of look, almost. There's crazy Mode 7 stuff going on, and like this guy here, this bosses that are flying to the screen and everything. It's just a really impressive looking game, and I played it a couple of years ago for the first time and just was like, what is this? How did I miss this? It's just crazy. So yeah, Rendering Ranger for sure. That's a more recent one. But in the past, Earthworm Jim blew me away the first time I played it. I rented it on Genesis, and I thought, wow, the animation in this is on the Genesis. This was like, what, 94 or something that came. It came out later. I think it was 94, and I think I might have. I don't know. I think I had mostly moved on to PC gaming at that point, but I would still rent games for my Genesis and Super Nintendo. And Earthworm Jim, man, I was just like, what? This is so cool. Batman and Robin on the Genesis. There's a lot of weird 3D tricks and things to do in that game. The graphics that really look crazy. The soundtrack on the game is also amazing. It sounds like a legit techno soundtrack, like done on the Genesis. That was really cool. Out of This World, which is a game I talked about a couple episodes ago, has all these cutscenes in it, and that came out in I think it was 91 that came out, 92 maybe, and I played it on Super Nintendo and was just blown away by the cutscenes and how cool it looked. All vector graphics based, I think. Even when I first got my Genesis back in 1990, I think, my uncle got it for me for Christmas. I didn't even know it existed, and he brought this 16-bit system home, for me, and I opened it, and I'm like, what is this? We popped an Altered Beast, and it was like, rise from your grave, and I'm like, whoa, it was like, this is cool, this is crazy. And then, I think he got me Strider and Altered Beast were the two games I had. And Strider it was like a I don't want to say it was a perfect arcade port, but it was pretty close, or maybe just as good, and just blew me away, man. I was like, wow, this is nuts, So for me, Soul Calibur, another example, the Dreamcast version of that game just blew me away at the time back in 99 when it came out, I think 98, 99. It was just so crisp looking and so smooth compared to anything else that had come out before it. Going from PlayStation to that, even N64 to that, was just like, this is another level. It took it up to another level. So yeah, but basically for me, it's graphic stuff that's always caught my eye. I'm shallow, I guess, in that way. It's not story elements for me, but it's always what I see first. Is what really grips me. So Andrew, now that you've had plenty of time to think, what about you, man? Like, there has to be something that has shocked you in a game.
Yeah. I think I just was trying to figure out how to approach the topic. Right. I'll just piggyback on your Out of This World or Another World.
Yep.
I saw that at a game store. They were showcasing the game. And back in the day when that first came out, everyone was like, what is this? How is this running on the Genesis? Absolutely beautiful game. Super hard game, though. But yeah, so yes, I think as far as graphically, that was one that blew me away. Nothing's ever blown me away since then. Maybe Crysis. That's the other one.
Crysis. Oh, that's a great example.
That's another one that kind of blew me. Like, well, we can do this now. Like that was
that's
so beautiful.
That came out in 2007, and I remember I didn't play it till years later when I was able to play it on max settings. And going through that jungle, man, in that game was something else. Like, it's still, if you play it in 4K now, it still looks really good, even for how many 13 years now it's been. It's like that game is still used as a benchmark, I think, in a lot of ways. So it's kind of crazy,
Yeah, I'll have to replay that one again. I'm gonna try that in 4K.
Yeah, for sure.
I was trying to think of something that was a little raunchy. I think for me, I was playing. I thought it was a kid's game. Actually, it is. It's called Ghostbusters 2 for DOS. Licensed game, whatever. And what you do is you take, you're the Ghostbusters. You take calls, and you're like, "Hey, Ghostbusters," and you get sent to places like the park, or you go to I don't know where else, but you go to a department store like a Macy's type of thing. And you walk in, and there are like, these mannequins, there's some clothing. And what you do is you got to shoot your zapper or whatever they had, those guns, and you have to shoot the ghost that's flying around. And as he's flying around, if you damage the background, you get less payout from the people from saving them from the ghost. So you don't want to blow up stuff, but you can. So for fun, I'm just blowing up everything in like the rooms, and because something exciting would happen. Anyway, I go to the department store, and I guess they have these changing rooms, and I don't know if you can find it, but I blew the door off the changing room, and there's this lady who's now holding her bare breasts, just dancing like that. And she's standing in there in like a white thong. I'm like, what?
Oh, there it is.
There
It's
it is,
literally
yeah.
on the screen.
I was like, what? Oh my goodness. That shocked me. That was
Okay.
funny.
Ultima was Ultima 7 Part 2, the Serpent Isle. And there was romancing options, and you could romance that girl in the first town. And I've talked about this before on the podcast. Sorry, it's not like a broken record, but it's like, in the Ultima games, you walk up to her, you have the love dialogue, and then it was just like, bloop, clothes would disappear, and then you both would just go plop, just flap down on the bed.
Right,
it shocked me at the time. I think I was 12 or 13 when I played that game, and I was just like, what? I was like, there was no Nintendo or Nintendo games like this. So yeah, there's of course young pubescent boys. Of course, those are the things we think of. Sadly.
Oh yeah.
It's like
it's like stripping your character off in Daggerfall again, like.
Yeah. Oh god, we had
and take off the top, and there you go.
Woo! Daggerfall. We talked about Daggerfall a few episodes ago. Yeah, I think Daria was on that episode. We were talking about it. Actually,
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, we were. There it is again, Andrew.
Oh god, take her off the street. This is a
Ghostbuster. Who would have
production.
thought that Ghostbusters 2 would be the game that shocked you?
Yeah, I know. Because you get more shocked on it when you least expect it, right?
Yeah. So, okay. All right, that's cool. So, all right, any final thoughts? Sorren, final thoughts?
No real kind of final thoughts, but I did want to just put this out there of because like we've talked quite a bit about playing like Game Boy games and things like that, and I didn't know if you guys were all aware of a company called Analogue, who they do like I think they've got a few consoles and that so you can put the actual physical cartridges. But there is so that like you don't have to have the actual console, but you can use the actual cartridges and that from old consoles. And yeah, I don't know when it's due out. I think it's due out this year, but they've got this thing called the Analogue Pocket, which is basically, I mean, this isn't going to help people on the audio version, but let's put that there. If you see, like it looks like a really modern, sleek, almost IKEA version of a Game Boy. And it's like the way it's designed means that it's got like really perfect like sound and visual emulation, and I mean it's not even really emulation, it's like it's kind of just doing it as one-to-one as it could to the original, but the cool thing about it is it's not just for Game Boy, so I think it comes with loads of like little adapters for the back, so any portable cartridge you can just put straight in that and then play. Yeah, like I thought I'd just throw that out there in case people didn't know about it, because to me it looks like, I mean, it's going to be very niche, like very niche.
Derek will want one for sure.
It looks
yeah, for the people that really enjoy playing those retro handheld cartridge games, but want, and still want to play off the cartridge, but want to play on a really nice device with a really crisp screen. And
I want the opposite of this. I want something I can just hook up to my regular TV and just plug in any portable game and have it on my, like a Super Game Boy, except for any portable game. That's what I want.
Well, it might be worth still looking into this then, because I don't know if there may be
way to hook it up to the TV.
So you can, because you might be able to hook it up and then still plug in like an actual controller or something. Like, I don't know. Usually you can with these kind of devices.
Oh, it's FPGA too. It doesn't use emulation apparently.
Yeah,
It's
I
actually,
think I think that's a big part of it too. And what I'm most excited about with that is for Game Gear stuff, because there's no really good way to
You're right.
actually play Game Gear and maybe
Yeah.
stream that. I'd love to stream some Game Gear, but I'm not paying 450 or
Yeah.
about 5 billion Canadian dollars right now to get a Game Gear modified to be able to do that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be really neat.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Goriya, since you're talking, any final thoughts on this topic?
On shocking games, the only thing I could think of was when Andrew was talking about blowing off changing room doors, was the bouncing car in Grand Theft Auto the first time I ever saw that happen. That kind of came screaming back in my memory. But apart from that, no.
Okay.
I've just, I guess, been very blessed to be experiencing games in this state in the first time, right? So
Right.
everything feels kind of shocking and brand new to me, and I feel like almost having other people experience that along with me when I've been streaming games has been really special. So I just kind of wanted to add that in as a little addendum, because it's really great, I think, for some people to be able to see someone play those games for the first time too. So, so yeah,
Okay.
that's been really meaningful to me.
Okay, great. Andrew?
Nice.
Okay, I guess the final thing I would say is I'm also I'm more shocked by the writing in video games. I think when the game's plots take twists and turns, that's when I'm really like taken aback and just like, wow, I can't believe this is going on. I think, what was it? Ultima 3. I don't want to spoil the ending, but I don't know, this game is older than me, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's, oh, here, I gotta show you. Where's the box? I got the box. The box. Okay.
Of course, he just pulls his boxes out. Yep.
Okay, there we go.
Yep.
So you can see like there's this scary dude on the cover.
Yep.
I got this reflection. It's a shiny box.
Looks good.
Yeah. So you got this demon, right? And you're like, damn, I can't wait to fight that guy. And so you play through the whole game. Like, you're making a party of 4. And Lord British says, okay, go get better and save the countryside. Because what happened was there's this island that emerges out of the ocean. And on the island is a castle. And the castle is home to this demon called Exodus. And you have to go through caves. You find these things called cards, like the sun card, the love card. And you're like, what do I do with these? But, you collect them and you grow your party. And just simplifying the whole game. And then you go to the island and you blow this silver horn to make the snake go away. And you can get inside the castle and you're fighting these demons where it's these big, scary monsters. There's dragons, all sorts of stuff at the very end of the castle. It's really tough. It's gearing you up for this epic confrontation. And let's see. Even your old weapons don't work. You have to go and find these mystic swords and mystic armors. Otherwise, you can't damage anything. And so finally, you get to the very end. You get to the throne room. But before that, you got to fight the floors, which are like these invisible monsters. So you beat them. You're like, okay, what do I do? And at the end is a machine. You're like, oh, what? It's like a computer. And
I remember that.
Yeah, you're like, oh, okay. It's just like a puzzle. And so it says, please insert the punch cards. And like, oh, that's why you have these cards that you collected from these dungeons and whatever. And you got to put them in the right order. So you put like this card in, you put the next, there's 4 cards. You put them in, and then it says, okay, Exodus shutting down, and you win the game. And all it was just a computer that was controlling everything. And yeah, so it's kind of like, what?
Yeah, I remember that now, dude. It's been a while since I played that one, but I remember that. You're right, man.
Yeah, and that's how you beat the game.
That's as bad as the ending of Gradius, where you get there and it's just this brain and it kind of just dies and then you win. You don't even fight it.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for being on. Very much appreciate it. And before we go, why don't we let Andrew and Hungry Goriya promo their channels? Andrew, let's start with you.
Okay. Well, yeah, thanks for inviting me on. I run Retro Island Gaming. I put videos out there on YouTube, not that often, but when I do, I make sure it's worth watching. I cover a lot of retro games. Let's see. I would recommend looking up my Doom versus Heretic video. I go into the old school game Doom, and I compare it to a very similar game called Heretic.
Andrew's being modest. He does a lot of crazy location shooting. He travels all over the island he lives on and films in crazy places, and really makes an effort to you make it relate to the game you're talking about as much as you can. You know, like what was that the place you were trying to get into for like months or whatever? You were trying to. Which one was that?
It was Aero Fighters. I was trying to review. And I was trying to get on a military base to film in front of these. You know, they're decommissioned jet planes, the exact planes that are in the game I'm reviewing. So I thought, oh, cool.
Yeah, I mean,
actual jet.
Who does that though?
I know. You can check it out.
Yes, you can check it out.
You'd still be part of the first 1,000 people to watch it.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. Goriya, tell us a little about your channel.
Well, my channel mostly covers, I guess, reviews or kind of retrospectives on games that I've played either very recently or things I've played probably up to 15 or 20 years ago for the first time. So more of my adventures through exploring various retro libraries, a lot of it brand new to me. And I've been having a blast with that as well. I've also been doing some streaming over on Twitch. So I've been doing that probably 3 nights a week there. So if you want to see the live experience versus the kind of condensed and shaken out version of what I actually went through playing a game, there's also that option as well. So you can catch me all over the place. I'm on the internet at least 3-4 nights a week doing something video game related.
When are you doing another one of those science game videos? Because that's how I discovered your channel, was the Metroid one, I think.
Right. I've got one in the works that I've been working on for a little while. And so it'll actually be on life force and how, life force and kind of the immune system and how that kind of all, like how the game is a really good model.
That's going to be great because you got the white blood cells and everything and some of the stages. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And how like the people that have been consumed by this being that you're fighting in are now fighting for him because they don't want to die. Because if their host dies, then they die too. It's kind of a neat like commensal organism perspective. So lots of neat stuff to pull out of those things. So I'm hoping that I'll be struck with more scientific questions kind of going through other games as I go. But yeah, that one's a really great one. I saw that and I thought, oh yeah, that's going to be a video someday. I just have to get my stuff going on that. And
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you everyone again. And on behalf of Sorren Day, Andrew Haden, Hungry Goriya, I'm Zach Smith. We are the GameFellas. We will see you next time. Later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Okay, yep. No, mute your mics. Let me screen share. Not that one, but the other one.
This is the most high-tech production I've ever seen for a podcast. This is so neat to see it all kind of coming together.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Because there was Grabbiz pads back then, but it didn't always. Wow, speaking of Dragon Age sex scenes, here we go.
Whoa!
Sorry, it's playing.
What are you talking about?
Now I'm going to have to insert this footage into the part that we're.
Yeah, there it is again.
There it is.
I am also back.
Cool.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Hungry. I waved, but you guys probably didn't see.
No, we probably didn't.
Hello.
Yeah, fix that webcam.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good old broken webcam, but not really at all.
For a while, huh?
Yeah, forever.
You all ready for this?
I am not ready at all. Zach invited me yesterday, and I'm like, ah!
Hey, man. This is your chance to shine, Andrew. This is your chance to shine.
That's the problem. I want to come on and shine, but I'm just going to be like, I don't know.
Well, my job is to keep everyone talking.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to talk about for this one. Fair warning. I was trying to think of stuff, but I was struggling. I don't know. Do you guys have a lot to say?
Just talk about Tim Curry, man. That's all you got to do.
I mean, that we can just make a whole new podcast. Like,
yeah, we could. Yeah. I didn't see the go poop in the bathroom on the floor for some strange reason. Everyone wanted to know that. What?
I just came in, all I heard was poop on the bathroom. So
yeah, that was cat poop on the bathroom floor. Sorry. Oh, so Goriya, I'll just tell you the story. Are you a Star Trek fan at all?
I've actually never seen a single episode of Star Trek.
Then the story doesn't matter, I guess. But anyway, my wife and I are big fans, and there's this service called Cameo, and there's a lot of celebrities on it, and you can pay them to do a personalized greeting. So I got a bunch of actors from Star Trek: The Next Generation to record my wife birthday greetings, and I put them all together in one video and gave it to her on her birthday. So it was really cool. And I sent it to Sorren because Sorren's a big fan. I think Sorren said he cried when he watched it.
It did choke me up a bit because it was like it just, there were so many. I wasn't expecting so many and they were all just like such nice messages as well.
They were, yeah.